The Ogre Kingdoms have one of the more unique campaigns of the Warhammer 3 launch lineup. Their society is based around meat, camps, and mercenary work, and they make full use of all of these aspects throughout their campaign. They have their own unique approach to settlements, recruitment, and even diplomacy, as they place themselves as a truly neutral faction that is as likely to offer alliances as they are to steamroll through your lands. Just before we get started, if you're interested, I've actually been streaming when I'm playing these guys for the campaign, so if you'd like to join me, I stream over on twitch.tv/COLONELDAMNEDERS at 2 PM on Fridays. I'd love to see you there. Now on to the video. Let's first go over the pros and cons of the Ogres campaign gameplay. As for the pros, their camps grant them massive bonuses in and out of their own territory. This means you can rush out into enemy lands, place one, and have increasing bonuses just for being near it. They also gain significant buffs from meat, and provided they have a steady supply, can adapt to capitalise on nearly any scenario. And as a truly neutral faction, they have the potential to make a huge amount of coin from trade, as they can get on nearly anyone's good side and have many resources nearby that they can exploit. As for the cons, the camps do need some time to build up, so by the time they are fully operational, you may have already moved on from the area. Add on the fact that they cannot be moved without totally deconstructing them, and you better pray you place them well to begin with. The downside of meat is that you can run out if you aren't constantly battling or playing near camps, and when you do run out, the consequences can send your army rapidly downhill. And the other side of the coin of being truly neutral is the fact that anyone on the map can turn on you in an instant, so you'd better hope you have some alliances set up early to dissuade enemy invasions. Let's start by going over the different factions. First up we have Goldtooth, which is led by Greasus Goldtooth. For their faction effects, they are granted 20 diplomatic relations with other Ogre Kingdoms, plus 25% income from trade, and plus 25% to all unit mass. For Greasus' Lord effects, he's granted 50% bonus income from raiding, minus 50% upkeep for Iron Guts, and plus 50% income from sacking and looting settlements. His faction starts in the Great Hall of Greasus, and for his starting army, he gains 3 Noblars, some Noblar Trappers, a Stonehorn, 2 Iron Guts, Ogre Bulls with dual weapons, and a unit of Ogre Bulls. For their climate preferences, Frozen, Wasteland, Mountain, Temperate and Jungle are suitable, Chaotic Wasteland, Temperate Island and Savannah are unpleasant, and Magical Forest, Ocean and Desert are uninhabitable. When playing as them, the starting war takes you both north and south to secure your starting province. After this is sorted, you can take the fight to the other ogres and take over all the mountains by force. There are a lot of lands here that could pull you in a ton of income later in the game. Alternatively, you could establish treaties with all the other ogres and take the fight to the greenskins in the south. This also offers you a lot of lands and gives you a defensible corner of the map should anyone come a-knocking. I would try to remain allies with Cathay to prevent them from expanding down into your lands, and besides, their lands are of little use to you anyway due to your climate preferences. Our other playable faction is the Disciples of the Maw. They are led by Scrag the Slaughterer. For their faction effects, they are granted plus 10% campaign move range, and plus 1 capacity, and plus 2 recruit rank for Butchers. As for Scrag's Lord effects, he grants plus 8 replenishment rate, and minus 50% upkeep for Gorgers. This faction starts in Gristle Valley, and his starting army gains 3 Noblars, some Noblar Trappers, 3 Gorgers, a Saber Tusk pack, Ogre Bulls with dual weapons, and Ogre Bulls. They have the exact same climate preferences as Greasus, and when playing as them, their starting war takes them into the Grey Mountains and nets you 2 provinces right out the gate. Once that's all secure, you can either head north or east into the rest of the Empire lands, as they are all very habitable. I would recommend heading east so you can get close to the other ogres and reconnect with the rest of your people. This does take you against Khal right at the start of your campaign, but if you catch him early enough, he's not too bad. You can take over pretty much all the lands south of Norska if you really want, but as always, you don't really need to overexpand in this campaign. We come now to the faction mechanics. First up we have meat. So every army in your faction runs on meat. They can gain it from post-battle captives, buildings, camps, characters, events and technology. It is spent on unit upkeep, some events, pre-battle feasts, as well as sacrifices to the Maw. The pre-battle feasts allow you to spend meat to increase the speed, unit mass and charge bonus of your army for the duration of that battle by 2 per meat for a maximum of 5 meat. The sacrifices to the Maw increase army power in a number of ways. Each bonus costs 10 meat and lasts for 10 turns. Bloody and Raw increases army melee attack and is great for whenever you do a lot of battling. Come and Get It grants increased campaign move range and is of course great for when you're moving long distances. Fill Your Bellies grants increased global recruitment speed, so is obviously great for when you're recruiting globally, and Give Me Gut Magic grants increased Winds of Magic reserves, so can be a powerful one if you're running a lot of spellcasters. Our next mechanic is the Ogre Camps. These are somewhere between an army and a settlement, and as you unlock capacity, you can place them anywhere an army is, as long as it's not too close to another settlement or camp. You can increase the capacity with certain Lord skills as well as research. Inside of camps, you can build a large number of buildings all the way to tier 5, whereas all your other settlements can only get to tier 3. This means that camps are the only way you can get endgame units with the tier 5 military buildings. They can also build a number of different buildings that provide bonuses to armies nearby. These bonuses come in the form of income, meat, recruitment capacity, and buffs for the camp's army. Yes, these camps can also recruit armies and can trade units, meaning you can recruit a full army inside the camp and then send it out into the world with any lord. These armies function as garrisons, so are worth building up to keep them safe if you can afford it. As I mentioned earlier, you cannot move these camps, so if you want to change the location of one, you're going to have to completely deconstruct it and then rebuild it somewhere else, starting from scratch. This does also mean that you can't move the army that you recruit inside of the camp, so they only function defensively. But on the plus side, they do get massive decreases to their upkeep, so they're not as expensive to maintain. Next up we have big names, so certain characters in the faction can complete actions to unlock big names which provide them with various bonuses. Both of the legendary lords have their selection, and then the non-legendary tyrants and hunters can also unlock some names. The actions required differ for each name and are often not too challenging but require you to use them in very specific ways so you won't stumble across all of them by accident. The effects of these names vary from character to character, but they are worth picking up, as some of them can be pretty dang strong and sometimes mean the difference between victory and defeat. And their final mechanic is contracts. Every 10 turns, contracts come to the Ogre Kingdoms, and they can be issued from pretty much any faction in the game, since Ogres really are true neutral. These contracts often come in the form of taking out lords and heroes, and raising settlements, and reward you with some gold, alongside relations with the issuer, and sometimes other bonuses, such as meat or camp growth. You only have 10 turns to complete each one, so they can put you under some pressure, so it can be wise to simply pick up quests you would complete anyway just by playing your campaign. We now come to the Lord skills. First up we have Grease's Goldtooth. First things first, his unique Tribe Stealer line wants to be picked up as soon as possible since it brings buffs to himself in combat alongside massive army buffs. Then you want to go into the blue line and pick up Ravager to stack his Lord effects and earn a ton of coin from sacking, and Raider for some added raiding income. All of this is of course to get Lightning Strike, but you could also pick up Quartermaster for some reduced upkeep, or Looter for more looting income, and of course Renowned and Feared is always useful. The red line of course has buffs for pretty much all units in the faction, so I'd pick some up for the units you're going to be using in the endgame to get that stack as powerful as possible. You can spec into Unstoppable Force and the rest of his yellow line if you want him to be an even better fighter, and pick up his army abilities including snacks for some constant regen. Finally, you can grab anything you want from the top row whenever you need it, including a massive amount of buffs for himself, some for Ogre Bulls, and his camping line for improving camps and increasing capacity. You want to get that as soon as possible. Next we have Scrag the Slaughterer. Of course, as with all spellcasters, you want to pick up their spells as soon as possible, to get right into there and pick up everything you want at a basic level at the very least. Then you want to dip into the blue tree and grab Healer for replenishment, as well as 1 point in anything else to get them to the next stage. Pick up the Research Trait to get Lightning Strike, and then have a point in anything else you want here to get Renowned and Feared. All of them are useful for different situations, so it really depends on your campaign and what this lord is going to be spending a lot of time doing. You want to get into the red line and buff your endgame units, of course, and once you get to level 14, you want to grab all the skills along the Gorger Onslaught line. They are all great and definitely worth picking up as soon as you can. Finally, pick up anything from the top row when you need it. There are a bunch of buffs for Scrag himself, as well as magic. Coming to the non-legendary lords, starting with the Slaughtermaster, you can get these in the Lore of Beasts or the Lore of Great Maw, and you want to level them pretty much the same as Scrag. You want to pick up their spells as soon as possible, so go right in there and pick up everything you want. You want to grab the same blue and red tree skills that Scrag did, pick up one of the level 20 skills. All of them are pretty strong depending on the situation you are in, so pick whichever one is best for you. Personally, I like Prophet of the Great Maw or Renowned Feastmaster for their powerful army buffs. Finally, pick up anything from the top row when you need it. There are a bunch of buffs for the Lord themselves, magic, and of course, immortality. Our other non-legendary lords are the Tyrants. Their Devour Challenges line is unique to them, so worth picking up, and of the free buffs, I'd either say Iron Disciple or Tithe Taker are the best. You have the same blue line as Greaser, so you're going to want to pick up the same skills as you did with him, since they are still the best picks here. You want to copy him again on the red line and buff those endgame units, and again on the yellow line for some combat buffs and abilities. And finally, the top row has many powerful one-offs you want to pick up over the course of their campaign, such as various buffs to the Tyrant themselves, recruitment buffs, and of course immortality. Coming to the heroes now, first up we have the Hunters. On the campaign map, they can assault enemy garrisons, assassinate characters, assault units, stimulate growth locally, and increase mobility when embedded in an army. Now these are your campaign assassins, but they are also very powerful fighters, so you can really build them either way. If you want them to be on the campaign map, then of course, pretty much the entire blue tree except mobility, and then wait for immortality. If you're taking them into battle, then you'll only want mobility and growth in the blue tree. After this, you'll go right into Independent Mind for all the various combat buffs. Just bear in mind they can eventually on the Stonehorn mounts, so choose your talents for that endgame form. You can also pick up various buffs for Saber Tusks, but since these are going to stop being used by the late game, this might not be such a great use of those skill points. Once you hit 20, you can pick up one of these 5 skills, and each of them buff the Hunter in specific ways, and are all really strong and viable. I personally like Great Beast Hunter, Strong Arm, or Stampede Rider. Finally, you want to grab anything you want from the top row, including that excellent Stonehorn mount, a bunch of buffs, and of course, immortality. Next up we have Butchers. These are available with the Law of Beasts or the Law of the Great Maw, and on the campaign map they can steal technology, wound enemy characters, hinder replenishment, cleanse corruption locally, and replenish troops when embedded in an army. Of course, these lads are pure spellcasters, so you want to grind their spell lines as much as possible and pick up everything you want as soon as you can. After this is done, you can grab replenishment in the blue line, alongside corruption cleansing. For 20 you want to choose from one of these 5 skill choices. As usual, they're all pretty good, but I prefer Feastmaster or the Greasy Prophet. Finally, you can grab anything you want from the top row with buffs to all sorts of stats, magic and immortality. And our final heroes are the Fire Bellies. On the campaign map, these can damage walls, wound characters, block armies, spread control locally, and provide scouting when embedded in an army. Another spellcaster, so we're going right to that spell tree and picking up every single thing we can. After this, you want to grab scouting and spread control to snag some more loot and keep your lands under control as you move through them. You can grab one of the level 20 skills, and as usual, they're all decent, but I prefer Incendiary. And finally, you can grab all sorts on the top row, like buffs, more abilities, and immortality. Coming to the commandments now, first up we have Crude Ingenuity. This grants -5 corruption, -5% recruitment cost, and +1 to recruitment capacity. Fairly self-explanatory when you want to use this one, when you're recruiting or when there's a lot of corruption. Might Makes Right grants -40% chance of plague spreading and +5% income from buildings. Great for having on your moneymaker settlements pretty much all the time, with the added bonus of slowing down plagues. And finally, Feast for the Strong grants +4 control, -20% move range for enemy armies starting their turn in the region, and +20 growth. This is of course great for when you've just taken over a province and want to establish control and rush growth. And of course, prevent enemy armies from moving in. As for their research tree, there are 4 sections to the Ogre tree, and each one you get to gains you more camp capacity. The further down the sections you get, the more you find text that buff later game units, alongside a healthy dose of infrastructure throughout. It's a fairly standard tree as they go, just pick up any buffs you need for whatever units you're using and give your faction a boost anywhere it's struggling. And that is everything you need to know about the Ogre campaign gameplay. If you enjoyed this video, then consider leaving it a like, and of course subscribe to see more videos like this, including the Ogre Battle Guide coming on Friday. Leave any questions you have in the comments below, and I'll answer them as best I can. I'd like to take this time to thank some supporters of the channel, like Adam T and Dominic Shamas, and in particular XJS and Henry Tucker for their support at the Unclean Ones tier. If you'd like to support the channel, you can become a member here on YouTube, a subscriber on Twitch, or a patron on Patreon. Doing so gets you shoutouts at the end of videos, just like all these lovely people. Huge thanks to all supporters, one final thank you for watching, and for now, I've been COLONELDAMNEDERS, and I will see you next turn.